Today is the deadline to sign an online petition inspired by the death of a pregnant woman in Windsor a year and a half ago. Cassandra Cake was 7 months pregnant when she was found dead at the scene of an arson in December 2014. Police have charged a man with first-degree murder. The petition posted to the federal government's website calls for the possibility for further criminal punishment in cases involving pregnant women. It's connected to a private member's bill introduced this year. The petition was introduced by Jeff Durham. He was the father-to-be, and he joins me in the studio. Good morning.
Hi there.
What does this petition call for exactly?
This petition calls for the protection of a woman's right to choose to carry her child safely to term, essentially, and it would protect her unborn baby. It would create additional charges in the case where she is killed or harmed.
So in the case of Cassandra,
Exactly.
There would be 2 charges rather than just 1.
Not exactly. There wouldn't be an additional murder charge necessarily. That would require changing the definition of when an unborn baby or a baby gets human rights. They don't have any human rights until they are born in Canada. We are not trying to change that. What we're trying to do is create an additional charge that considers the choice of a woman in such circumstances. We're not trying to affect abortion rights or anything like that. What we want is an additional charge that considers a woman's preborn child.
If we talk about special consideration for someone who might be charged in a case like Cassandra's and Molly's, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see our criminal justice system acknowledge the reality that it presents to the victims of the crime. I'd like to see an increase in the penalty that exists for people who could actually commit this crime. It's a complete disregard for reality, and it's actually harming women to ignore this as a problem.
Now, I understand you have support from 2 groups in particular, and you think that is important. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the Native Women's Association of Canada has endorsed the bill, and so has the Canadian Resource Centre for Victims of Crime. I think it's important that people see that this isn't about pro-life and pro-choice. It's about pro-women. And it needs to be taken out of that argument. And people are starting to catch on that really that's what it's about.
What are you hearing from supporters?
Supporters are generally astonished that something like this does not exist in the first place. The people that are willing to actually look at the problem and the proposed solution are in agreement that something needs to be done. People have been very supportive through all political views and ideologies. So it's not really a question of politics. It's a question of whether somebody wants to take the time to actually look at the issue, what it is about.
Well, with all due respect, it is a question of politics in that politicians would have to change the law. What are you hearing from politicians?
It's odd because I've heard both support and disregard for it. I've heard people say that because this law wouldn't alleviate all crime against women, they won't consider it. I've heard that, there's some people, politicians who are supportive of it. And there are politicians who seem to want to make sure that it's more popular in there. This is my understanding of it, that want more of a consensus.
That's your interpretation?
That's my interpretation.
Now, this is before the federal government.
Yes.
What are you hearing from our local members of parliament?
Basically nothing. Essentially, we had a meeting with them in February, and we spoke to them, and it's pretty difficult to deny that there is a problem here. And in private, they were very willing to acknowledge that problem and see the injustice. And they even said that there's definitely something that can be done. And since then, it's been relatively quiet. As much as I've tried to work with them in this, there's been little effort on their part to address it.
Now, you mentioned this briefly early in our conversation, but I'm wondering what kind of backlash you're getting from people who think this opens the abortion debate.
Well, because of the nature of what we're asking for, it seems to be the greatest effort has continually gone into dispelling the myth that this would affect abortion politics in any way, that it has to affect. It does not. It's one thing to agree or disagree with Bill C-225, Cassie and Molly's law, but to disregard it as a problem entirely and not respond with your own type of solution is a complete insult to, I think, the choice of women, a woman's choice in general.
You, as well as other family and friends, have been pushing for justice on this since shortly after Cassandra Caake died, but it seems difficult to make any progress. How frustrating is all of this?
It's very frustrating, and we have made progress, though. And I have to look at that when I get frustrated, because there's a lot more awareness now, and there's a lot more clarity on the issue, and there's a lot more support, and it's growing. So that's positive. And the question is whether people will take the time, the people that have the power to change such things, whether they're going to take the time to look at what is an obvious problem.
The deadline to sign the online petition is this afternoon.
It's today at 3:00.
If people want to sign that petition, how do they do it?
Well, you could go to the Molly Matters Facebook page and find a link. They're all over. Or you could go to mollymatters.org, and there's a sign the petition link right at the top.
And what happens after 3:00 today?
Basically, the petition expires. The e-petition is allotted 3 months to get signatures, and after that it expires. Unlike the paper petition, which will be available to sign until this problem is addressed.
Good of you to come in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That is Jeff Durham, who continues to push to change Canadian laws. Cathay Wagantall is a Conservative Member of Parliament from Saskatchewan. In February, she introduced Bill C-225, the Protection of Pregnant Women and Their Preborn Children Act, also known as Cassie and Molly's Law. She also sponsored the petition. Windsor Morning producer Robin Brown spoke with Cathay Wagantall to talk about what happens to the petition now.
It does come to the House for us to present, and the Minister of Justice would respond to it in a similar way that she does when we present the hard copy petitions in the House of Commons.
What weight does it hold?
It is significant because it gives us opportunity over and over again to bring forward that Canadians across the country are alert and aware of something that we're dealing with in the House of Commons, especially with a private member's bill like mine, where, it is an issue that impacts women across the country. And so it gives us an opportunity just to get a real sense in real time from Canadians of why and how this particular topic is very important to them.
Just so I get a sense then of the petition, once Parliament resumes, at some point you would get up in the House and present this petition to the Minister of Justice?
Yeah, there's a time during procedure where anyone who is a member can stand up and present a petition to the House, and then the minister responds. Her office is required to respond to each petition as it's tabled in the House.
So it would be a combination then of this online petition, this e-petition, as well as the hard copy ones they've been passing around.
And I've had opportunity over and over again to present those. And every time that I do, I have approximately a minute to get up and say something in regards to the petition. So, in one case, I might draw attention to the fact that, we recognize that we have laws against indecencies towards a dead body. Well, that dead body is no longer alive, no longer a human being, but we have laws because we respect that there was life there. And so we also, through this petition, we're seeing that Canadians are calling on us to respect the fact that there's a life that is being anticipated as part of a family, and they want Cassie and Molly's law to pass. So it's just an opportunity to draw more attention to why the bill is important, and MPs should support it.
And what is the status of that bill?
I will be going to second hour of debate October 5th, and in that hour, 2 other individuals will be able to debate for it. The other parties have an opportunity to stand up and either support it or debate against it. And then I get 5 minutes at the end to wrap up and encourage people to support it. And then I believe it's 3 days later, the actual vote will take place, and in that vote, it's whether or not to send it to third reading, send it to committee. That's obviously the next goal is to see it go to committee.
Jeff Durham has expressed frustration that it seems to have become almost a partisan political issue. What are you hearing on Parliament Hill in terms of support?
Well, I am reaching out to all of the MPs. That is part of the challenge always, is to encourage people to, especially with a private member's bill, to vote their conscience and not necessarily the direction of their party. And from the debate that we've heard, it's pretty clear that as a party, both the Liberals and the NDP are not standing in support of it. I have asked individuals, and they have expressed that they are still making that determination on their own. So that's why it's important to continue on with the debate. I've actually been working on a rebuttal to each of the statements made in those arguments in the House by the NDP speakers and the Liberal speakers, so that people can go to my website, or we'll be putting it out in other ways as well, for them to see, okay, they may have said this, but in actuality, we've worked really hard to make it very clear that the arguments against do not stand up. And the fact that Canadians are supporting it so strongly from coast to coast and in the petitions, people are very much on board with the fact that if a woman chooses to carry her child to term and she's attacked violently and loses that opportunity to have her child, that we should have very specific laws that deal with that. And that's all part of that big picture of dealing with violence against women. But women are especially vulnerable when they're pregnant. I did have one individual on Twitter say to me, I was expecting my first child, so excited, and had a miscarriage and was just so devastated that she then got pregnant again and wasn't ready to go ahead with it and chose to have an abortion. But she said, now I'm having my children and I want this law. So she kind of, to me, was a real encouragement to realize that, no, this law has a place. And when a woman chooses, to have her child, we need laws in place to deal with violence against her when she's pregnant.
That was Saskatchewan Conservative MP Cathay Wagantall speaking with Windsor Morning producer Robin Brown. Her proposed bill, Cassie and Molly's Law, is named after Cassandra Cake, who was 7 months pregnant when she was found dead at the scene of an arson in Windsor in 2014. She had planned to name her child Molly. Matthew Bruss is charged with first-degree murder in that case, and it's now before the courts. The deadline to sign the online petition on the government's website is 3:42 this afternoon, and you can find a link on the Molly Matters Facebook page. The last time we checked, there were just over 6,000 signatures on it. And Cathay Wagantall tells us she has an announcement coming tomorrow morning about some progress in her private member's bill.